The CIA spent millions training psychics to spy on the Soviets. Sounds insane, right? But for over 2 decades, they believed mind powers could win the Cold War. The question is, did it work? The Cold War wasn't just a battle of weapons. It was a war of intelligence, secrets, and psychological warfare. After World War II, the US and the Soviet Union found themselves locked in a high-stakes competition, each racing to outmaneuver the other in military power, technology, and espionage. Traditional spying methods like informants, wiretapping, and code breaking were no longer enough. Both nations were desperate for an edge, and that led them to explore the most unconventional tactics imaginable. Then came the shock. In the late 1960s, US intelligence agencies discovered something alarming. The Soviets were investing heavily in psychic research. Declassified documents later revealed that the USSR was pouring millions into telepathy, mind control, and remote viewing. The idea that people could see locations and events from miles away, using only their minds. The CIA couldn't afford to fall behind. If the Soviets were onto something real, the US needed to catch up, and fast. So, in the early 1970s, the agency launched a highly classified project to determine whether psychic abilities could be weaponized. They wanted to know, could a trained psychic spy locate enemy bases? Could they uncover top-secret Soviet operations? Could the human mind become the ultimate tool for intelligence gathering? What started as a fringe experiment soon became one of the strangest government programs in US history, and so, Project Stargate was born. By the early 1970s, the US government was growing increasingly anxious. Reports suggested that the Soviet Union had invested millions into psychic research, attempting to develop telepathic soldiers and mind-reading spies. If there was even a small chance that these abilities were real, the CIA couldn't risk falling behind. This fear led to the creation of one of the most secretive and bizarre intelligence programs in US history, Project Stargate. The program officially began in 1972 at the Stanford Research Institute, SRI, in California, where scientists were tasked with studying remote viewing, the ability to visualize distant locations or events using only the mind. The CIA enlisted 2 physicists, Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff, to conduct experiments and test whether psychic abilities could have real-world intelligence applications. One of their first recruits was Ingo Swann, a man who claimed to have extraordinary psychic abilities. In a groundbreaking experiment, Swann allegedly described the rings around Jupiter before NASA's Pioneer 10 spacecraft even confirmed their existence. This was enough to convince the CIA to expand the project. Over the next 2 decades, Project Stargate grew. The U.S. Army and the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, joined in, funding top-secret psychic training programs. Participants, often referred to as remote viewers, were placed in sealed rooms and asked to visualize hidden locations, military bases, or even classified enemy documents. Their descriptions were recorded and later compared to real intelligence reports. At its peak, the program employed over a dozen trained psychic spies, some of whom were assigned to real-life CIA and military missions. While some results seemed eerily accurate, skepticism remained. Was this the future of intelligence gathering, or just a desperate Cold War experiment? One way to find out was to put these psychic spies to the test. And that's exactly what happened next. With the CIA fully committed to testing psychic espionage, Project Stargate needed a structured method to train and evaluate their so-called remote viewers. The goal was simple. Could a person sitting in a controlled room visualize a distant target, like a military base, a missile silo, or even an enemy leader, without ever physically being there? Let's see the remote viewing process. A typical remote viewing session followed a strict protocol. The psychic was given minimal information, sometimes just a set of geographical coordinates, a name, or even a sealed envelope containing a target description. They would then enter a deep meditative or trance-like state, often using relaxation techniques or focusing on a blank screen. They would begin describing what they saw, drawing sketches, writing down impressions, or verbally explaining their vision. Their descriptions were later compared with satellite images, intelligence reports, or mission details to determine accuracy. One of the leading figures in these experiments was Joseph McMoneagle, an Army veteran recruited into the program. He claimed to have seen inside secret Soviet bases, including describing the construction of a massive submarine before Western intelligence discovered it. Some of the most astonishing claims from Project Stargate included the Soviet submarine case. McMoneagle allegedly described a brand new class of nuclear submarines being built in a Soviet shipyard, details later confirmed by spy satellites. The Iranian hostage crisis, 1979 to 1981. Remote viewers were reportedly used to locate where American hostages were held in Tehran, providing intelligence to military planners. The search for a downed spy plane. A remote viewer was asked to help locate a missing U.S. aircraft. Their description supposedly led search teams directly to the wreckage. While some intelligence officials were impressed, skeptics remained unconvinced. Even if a remote viewer got details right, was it luck, subconscious knowledge, or actual psychic ability? The CIA had no clear answer, but as the Cold War raged on, they continued funding these experiments, hoping to turn the human mind into the ultimate spy weapon. As Project Stargate expanded, the CIA put its psychic spies to the test in real-world operations. While the idea of using mind-powered espionage seemed far-fetched, some results were so shockingly accurate that intelligence agencies continued funding the program for over 2 decades. One of the most famous remote viewing successes involved Joseph McMoneagle, one of the CIA's top psychic spies. In the late 1970s, U.S. intelligence was desperate to uncover details about a new class of Soviet submarines. Spy satellites captured images of a shipyard, but details were unclear. McMoneagle was given only the coordinates and asked to describe what he saw. He sketched an enormous submarine with a domed hull and missile launch tubes, a design never seen before. Months later, satellite imagery confirmed his vision. The Soviet Typhoon-class submarine, the largest nuclear submarine ever built, was under construction. In the 1980s, U.S. intelligence agencies were scrambling to locate an American General Dozier, who had been kidnapped by Italian terrorists. Despite their best efforts, no solid leads emerged. In a desperate move, the CIA turned to its psychic spies. A remote viewer reportedly pinpointed the exact location where Dozier was being held, an apartment in Padua, Italy. Special forces raided the site and rescued Dozier unharmed, leading some to believe that psychic intelligence had played a role in the mission's success. The CIA also attempted to use remote viewing to gather intelligence on foreign political figures. One case involved Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. In 1986, as tensions between Libya and the U.S. escalated, remote viewers were tasked with locating Gaddafi's whereabouts in case military action was needed. According to reports, one psychic spy described Gaddafi hiding in a specific military bunker. While it's unclear whether this intelligence influenced U.S. military strikes, it showed that the CIA was willing to explore any method, no matter how unconventional, to stay ahead of its enemies. When a top-secret U.S. spy plane crashed in an undisclosed location, the military faced a crisis. The wreckage contained classified technology that couldn't fall into enemy hands. With time running out, remote viewers were asked to help. One psychic allegedly described a barren landscape with mountains and a river nearby. Search teams cross-checked the description with known locations and found the wreckage shortly after. Whether this was coincidence or true psychic ability remains a mystery. Was it all real? While many missions produced uncanny results, skeptics argue that psychic intelligence was often too vague or unreliable. Even so, the U.S. government continued funding Project Stargate until 1995, spending over $20 million on psychic espionage. In the end, the CIA had to ask itself, was mind-powered spying a breakthrough in intelligence, or just Cold War paranoia? Despite its intriguing results, Project Stargate faced growing skepticism. By the early 1990s, the Cold War had ended, and funding for top-secret military programs came under intense scrutiny. While the CIA and the Department of Defense had invested over $20 million into psychic espionage over 2 decades, they needed to determine whether it was a true intelligence asset or just a costly experiment. While some remote viewing sessions had produced shockingly accurate details, others were wildly inconsistent. Intelligence officials couldn't rely on psychic data alone, and remote viewing was often used only as a last resort when conventional methods failed. Additionally, scientific scrutiny intensified. The CIA commissioned an independent review of Project Stargate in 1995, led by the American Institutes for Research. The findings were damning. While some remote viewers had achieved above-average accuracy, the data was too inconsistent and lacked practical value for intelligence gathering. By the mid-1990s, the US government was moving towards high-tech surveillance, satellites, and cyber warfare, leaving little room for paranormal experiments. In 1995, the CIA officially shut down Project Stargate, concluding that psychic spying had no strategic advantage over conventional intelligence methods. The program's final declassified report stated that while some results were intriguing, no solid evidence proved that remote viewing could reliably aid national security. Project Stargate was quietly terminated, and its files were declassified, revealing one of the strangest intelligence operations in US history. Even though the program was shut down, some former participants, like Joseph McMoneagle, insist that remote viewing was real and effective. Some intelligence officials even admitted that certain remote viewing sessions had produced information that conventional spies later confirmed. Whether Project Stargate was a revolutionary experiment or a Cold War-era delusion, one thing is certain. For over 20 years, the US government seriously explored the idea of fighting wars with the power of the human mind. For over 2 decades, the US government poured millions into unlocking the hidden potential of the human mind. From tracking Soviet submarines to locating hostages, Project Stargate walked the thin line between science and science fiction. While some remote viewing sessions were eerily accurate, the lack of consistency and scientific validation led to its downfall. But here's the real question. Was Project Stargate truly a failure? Or was it shut down because it worked too well? Some believe that psychic espionage continues in secrecy, hidden from the public eye. After all, if mind-powered spying could give any intelligence agency an advantage, wouldn't they keep it classified? Regardless of what you believe, one thing is certain. During the Cold War, the US and the Soviet Union were willing to explore even the most bizarre possibilities to gain the upper hand. And if governments were experimenting with psychic spies decades ago, who's to say they aren't doing it now? What do you think? Was Project Stargate a real intelligence breakthrough, or just Cold War paranoia? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history's strangest secrets, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories.